Hey everybody, welcome to part 4 in this series, and we're still working on this stuff from the estate sale. And I want to show you a couple of chunks of aluminum that I found there. These have milling marks on them. These were obviously made into something. I don't know what. There are two approximately 1 inch or 3/4, I don't know, some good sized through holes here. There are 4 through holes here, but there's still plenty of good aluminum to be had here. This one's marked in and this one's marked out, so I don't know what they were making here, and I don't really care. So the 16.5 inches long, 5 inches in that dimension, and 3 inches in this dimension, roughly. I got these basically. We agreed on paying the price of scrap for these, so we checked and the current price was 35 cents a pound, and we estimated the weight on these, and I ended up paying $15 for the 2 of these. So the other one actually doesn't have the big holes in it on this side, it's just got these holes here. So but still some nice good sized chunks of aluminum. I should be able to use them for a project or something down the road. So I didn't want to leave those to go to the scrapyard, which is where they were definitely destined to go if I didn't take them. So this next group of items I'm about to show you, I bundled together all for one money. And let's start with some simple stuff here. This is a little tray of taps. I'm lousy with taps. There's a few drill bits in there too. It's a nice one of those little short ones. So just going to put these off to the side, and eventually I'll get down to sorting them out, along with the hundreds of other taps that I've said I'm going to do that to eventually. And then also in here was wrapped up in this nice piece of paper was this nice shell mill. There we go. So I don't know what the deal is on this, but it's kind of interesting to me the way this is made. Clearly I have an R8 I believe arbor that this will fit, but what's funky to me about this thing is I'm assuming that these are probably carbide cutters on here, but there's just these slots that are cut in here, and these things are jammed in there. There is no fastener. This says Falcon TL something, but I don't know whether or not this is something that was made in a in shop by somebody, that they took some other tool and made it into this thing. I'd be curious to see how this cuts. One of these days I'm going to grab this thing and throw it in the mill and just see what it does. It's an interesting cutter, to say the least. But yeah, those definitely look like the carbide tips on there. Oh, and those of you who watched my last episode with the gauge block sets, I'm happy to report I did actually have the little wooden piece to that set. There's the little shelf that was missing. So a little bit of glue, a little bit of love, and we'll put that box back together. This I found laying around, but I recognized that it looks very much like something that's screwed on to one of the spindles on the Hammond No. 6 grinder that I bought. Remember I talked about that grinder's got some strange issues that I've got to work out. This definitely looks like it's got the tapered hole here and probably threads that would allow this to screw maybe onto the... I don't get what this is at all. I don't get if this is supposed to be a tool for helping mount grinding wheels to that grinder. I mean, again, like I said when we first looked at the grinder in episode 1, that thing that's on the grinder right now looks much newer. I mean, this does definitely seem like it's made to clamp down on a disc. And then the question would be, does this go onto the tapered shaft of the grinder, and then, well, I guess there should be a nut that would go on here. So what's the purpose of having this tool? Is this tool something that when you take the nut off, you screw this tool on to pop this off the taper? I wish there was some markings on this somewhere to indicate what the hell this is. Well, I just looked at this more closely and I don't see any indication that's going to tell me anything about who made this. Because if I knew who made it, maybe I could look up online and get a little bit more educated about what the heck it's supposed to be for. But I definitely wanted to make sure I grabbed it because it looked so much like the one that was already on the grinder. I figured it might be something that went with that grinder. Next up are these two hold downs, I guess, for lack of a better term, that I've never seen before. The way these appear to work, if I'm understanding these correctly, is I think that basically you use these in conjunction with hold down bolts and T-nuts on the milling machine, maybe through these slots. Then there appears to be it appears that you can use these Allen screws to screw these Allen screws in and out up against the bolts, maybe. I'm not quite sure. I'm just kind of spitballing here. I have absolutely no idea, but they just looked really interesting to me. And they've got a cam action to them, or a swivel action here. There's a pivot point here, and what happens is when you tighten this bolt down, you can see that actually tilts this forward and will cause this pressure point right here, okay, this little disc, which by the way swivels, okay, which makes sense that it would swivel because as the angle changes it can continue to put pressure squarely against whatever you're clamping. It moved that in. So if you oriented these two on the mill like this, okay, I could see where I could clamp these down to my mill table, and I could put something in here and use this to hold it. So if anybody knows what the heck this type of a clamping device is called, or who makes it, I mean, it's just black. I can't find, other than engraved in on here, a number, which is probably just a part number for the tool crib or something like that. I can't find any identification on this thing. This screams like Sharpe or something like that. I might be wrong, but there's some rust on this one. But I just thought they were kind of neat clamps, so I scored those. Then there were a few drill chucks there. And on this initial first trip, because of cost consideration and various other things, I really only zeroed in on one drill chuck that really caught my eye and I really wanted to try and get, so I did. And that's this baby here, a Jacobs 20N ball bearing chuck. The N pretty much denotes that it's the Super Ball bearing series. This has got a nice light coat of oil on it, so it's in excellent shape. This is a number 5 Jacob taper, which means that the taper inside this end of the chuck is a number 5 Jacobs taper. It's got a Morse taper adapter in it. This is a number 3 Morse taper, and this is a 3/8 inch to 1 inch capacity chuck, or 10 to 25 millimeter capacity chuck. And this is, when you find these on eBay in good condition, they tend to bring some pretty decent money. So I was really glad to get this chuck, because with this chuck, I think this will now be the largest chuck that I own. Definitely, it's the largest chuck that I own, I believe, and I believe that this is going to fit right in the tailstock of my Vernon lathe. So now, I don't have to necessarily mess around with Morse tapers. I've got some large straight shank drill bits that I could put in this and use in my lathe. Just to give you an idea on size comparison, previously this was my largest Jacobs chuck. This is an 18N. Look at the difference. How much bigger this thing is compared to this, even though there is no 19, I don't believe, N. So I think it goes 18N, 20N. And then I did have this old chuck that I got at a sale. Forgot who makes this thing. So that's like a little bit in between here. But I haven't done anything with this yet. This has got a much bigger taper on it. Morse taper adapter on it. I forgot, this is made in Germany, but I think I figured out already that this was a lower end, like a Ron or something like that, chuck made in Germany. So this is going to be, like I said, a welcome addition to my lathe. I think this is the last item I'm going to have in this one. Again, in the interest of trying to keep the length of these videos down to a decent size. And let's see, yeah, I think I covered everything else that I wanted to in this episode, other than this right here. Now, interesting thing about a lot of this stuff, these items were machinist related, came out of machine shop or laboratory and things like that. But the one thing that I noticed was the only toolboxes around were Craftsman rollaway toolboxes, and they had more mechanics related and regular tools in them. And so there were no machinist toolboxes, no Gerstners, no Kennedys. Furthermore, with the exception of only a couple of items, I found almost no regular good old measuring instruments, machinist measuring instruments, like good old regular vernier or dial calipers, or good old, regular micrometers. As you just saw in the previous episode, I found a stand micrometer, but that's not typical of what you would find in a machinist toolbox. And this was one of the few exceptions. I found this in desk drawer, and what's in here is a Brown & Sharpe 0 to 1 inch .0005 digit mic. This is a digital micrometer. 06220-206 is apparently, I guess that's a Brown & Sharpe part number. But this thing is clean as a whistle. The alignment or adjustment wrench is covered in this tape that looks very possibly original, and I'm actually thinking, based on the fact that I can't find a blemish or a mark on this thing, spoke too soon. Boy, I'll tell you, whoever had there's a rub mark here, a little bit of tape on it here, and there is somebody right there engraved it. So yeah, these were actually used, but they're so, look like they were really well taken care of, which is nice to see. Now, I haven't decided yet if I'm going to keep this micrometer for myself, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, I already have one of these, and it might be a Starrett. That's pretty sad when you don't remember. But it just goes to show you, I tend to reach for my calipers for most of the stuff that I've messed around with to date. Haven't really been that worried about that kind of accuracy. And then in the few times when I did need a mic, I just tended to grab a regular manual micrometer, not one of these fancy schmancy overpriced digital ones. Well, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say they're overpriced. I guess overpriced might be a little harsh. Doesn't turn on, so I would like to pop this battery door off just to make sure there isn't a battery sitting in here corroding. Oh, there we go. Well, not only is there a battery, there are two batteries in here that are doing nothing. I should get those out. Well, good news is, don't see any damage. And oh, lo and behold, these batteries are also number 357s, just like the other ones. Well, as luck would have it, I have a couple of these. Oh yeah, here we go. Hello. I don't know if I'm not using this right or what. Let's see. I don't know if that's coming out on the video very well because it almost looks like it's almost very hard to see, but that's because you have to tilt it. You have to look at it at an angle, and that's probably by design. That would make sense. So I would say that's probably a good micrometer. So this has almost got like a slip clutch as opposed to a little click stop like you normally have on some micrometers. So let's see, how do you zero this thing? There's a button on the side here that seems very hard to push. I don't know what that does. Well, it says C/on. C must be clear, so. But every time I push it, it seems to change which digit flashes. So let's see. Maybe I push it and hold it. And that shuts it off. Okay. Let's try turning it on again. Oh, there we go. You turn it back on, it comes all up zeros. And it looks like it comes up millimeter. So I'm going to hit the inch millimeter button. And now that's showing me 2 arrows pointing to a line. I don't know what that means. I have no idea what I'm doing. Now I can't seem to get it out of the millimeter modes. Well, it does repeat to 0 though when I do that, in millimeter. I'm sure it's a matter of just going online and finding a manual. No, not e-manual. A manual. Ha ha ha.